There's a version of Spain that lives in every travel brochure. The bright, crowded plazas, the famous landmarks. You already know the name before you ever get to the destination. But what I want to show you is something different. As an artist, the real story is almost never found in the places that advertise themselves. It is found in the quiet, unphotographed spaces in between. The road that runs through the vineyard countryside that's been producing wine for 2,000 years. The small bodega where a winemaker walks you through a cellar and the light does something to the stone walls that you were never expecting. That's Spain, the region most people drive right past, the one that doesn't advertise itself. I want to take you there. I want to show you what happens when you stop looking for the perfect shot and start looking for the truth of the place itself. I think the biggest trap we fall into as creatives, whether you photograph, paint, write, or do music, is the pressure of the destination, the perfect subject to make meaningful work. But I don't believe that's true. Burgos is not a city that eases you in. Rising out of the city is the Cathedral, one of the most ornate Gothic structures in Europe. They began building it in 1221, and it took over 300 years to complete. 300 years of stone carvers, architects, and builders, all working towards something that none of them would ever see completed in their own lifetime. I think about that every time I stand in front of it. As a photographer, Gothic architecture is one of the hardest things to shoot well, not because it's difficult to find a good angle, but because there is almost too many angles to figure out. Every surface has something happening on it. Every spiral leads your eye to somewhere else. It's easy to look at something so grand and feel like your own voice is too small to capture it. You start chasing the postcard angle instead of trusting what you actually feel. If you've ever felt stuck or intimidated by the beauty of what others have already done, I want you to take a breath. The trick isn't finding something new to look at. It's changing how you see in the first place. Here's a tip. When you're standing in front of something this complex, your instinct is to back up and get all of it in the frame. That's a great way to capture the building as a whole, but I want you to do the opposite. Move closer. Find one carved fixture, one arch, one detail that tells the whole story by itself. A single well-chosen detail is almost always more powerful than just a full frame. That is true in photography. It is true in painting. It is true in any visual art that you're making. Gothic architecture understood something that we still teach in art school today, that the direction and the quality of the light shapes how the space feels emotionally, not just visually. They built these windows intentionally. The colors, the placement, the way the morning light falls differently than in the afternoon, that's all done by design. Here's a tip. Exposing for stained glass windows without blowing them out is one of those things that trips up a lot of photographers. Here's what I do. I expose for the glass, not the interior. I let the interior go dark. In post-edit, I bring back the shadow detail. What you end up with is an image that feels the way the space actually felt. That contrast between glowing color and deep shadow is exactly what the builders intended. They wanted you to feel small. Let your camera feel small too. I've stayed at a couple different places when visiting Burgos, but my favorite is the Hotel Landa, just outside the city. It's built around a medieval tower that has been standing since the 14th century. The kind of place where you walk into your room and realize the walls are 3 feet thick. Before we left Burgos, we visited the Abbey of St. Maria, a monastery founded in 1187. It's been a royal pantheon, the burial place of Castilian kings and queens for 8 centuries. is one of the quietest places I've ever stood with a camera. There's a particular quality of the light in those rooms that I don't know how to fully explain. It's the closest thing to perfect natural studio light that architecture has ever accidentally built. I stood there for a long time before I took a single shot. Lerma was nothing more than a bathroom break. It was a spot on the map on the way to vineyard country. The Duke of Lerma built this entire town in the early 1600s as a personal retreat, a perfectly reserved Renaissance city that most people drive through without ever stopping. I stepped inside a tiny local cafe to use the restroom and to get something to drink. As I stood in line, I noticed that every single person was a man. Every single one of them were watching soccer or playing games. No one looked up. Nobody cared that a group of Americans had just walked in. I took one photograph in there, just one, because my 30 years in this career have taught me that some moments are not about getting the shot. They're about being present enough to recognize a real living community that isn't performing for you. There was a little shop next door. Inside, I found cured meats, breads, and a lot of other interesting things. The kind of shop where you can feel the whole food culture of a region just standing in the aisle. As we headed out for our next destination, I noticed that the landscape had started to change. One minute you're on a highway moving through open country, and suddenly there's vineyards everywhere. Row after row, running up the hillsides and down into the valleys, as far as you can see in every direction. La Rioja has been wine country for 2,000 years. The Romans planted vines there. The monasteries kept the tradition going through the Middle Ages. The families that run the bodegas today have been working the same soil for generations. They understand a truth that modern hustle culture tries to make us forget. That meaningful work requires deep roots, and it cannot be rushed. As an artist, this resonated. There is power within the in-between. Creativity thrives by being patient in order to grow into something meaningful. When you visit a place like this, the goal isn't to document it like a journalist or collect landmark like a tourist. The goal is to look for the quiet rhythms, the way a town lives when it thinks no one is watching. That is where the poetry is. We arrived in Briones during a local yearly festival. There were families in the streets, food being shared, kids running around. The whole town was out together. And I just wanted to walk through it, watch it, let it be what it was. I didn't shoot a lot of photographs, just enough to try and capture what it felt like in the moment, what it felt like being there. Lunch at Algar restaurant at the Santa Maria Briones Hotel was one of the finest meals of the entire trip. The kind of meal where you stop talking for a few minutes because the food actually deserves your full attention. This is Sajazarra, a medieval walled village that most people have never heard of. We walked through it in near total silence. We learned that most of the locals were likely out in the vineyards working and the kids were in school. The town was just still, quiet. There's a particular kind of stillness in a working village that is different from an abandoned one. The doors are painted, the window boxes have flowers. The place is alive. It's just busy living, not performing for the visitors that come there. Here's a tip. One thing I've learned about shooting in places like this is if you want the photograph to feel timeless rather than trendy, watch your color temperature. Very warm orange filtered edits are everywhere right now. They look current. In 5 years, they'll look dated. When I'm shooting somewhere with real historical weight, I pull my color temperature back towards neutral. I let the actual warmth of the stone and the light carry the image. You don't need to add warmth that's already there. Trust what the place gives you. San Vicente de la Sonsierra sits on a high hill above the valley. From up there, you can see the vineyards stretch out below in every direction. It's the kind of view that makes you understand why people have been living and farming this land for 2,000 years. And then there was the Bodega Lecea. I've toured wineries before. I've done the tastings, walked the barrels, and heard the history. All of that was here too, but this was different. It felt more personal. They took us underground first, into a tunnel system that runs beneath the entire bodega, and reportedly beneath other parts of the town. Stone carved out by hand, centuries of wine stored in the dark and the cool. The light down there was almost nothing. A few bare bulbs, shadows everywhere. Wine cellars are some of the most beautiful spaces to photograph, but for a photographer, it's a technical challenge. It forced me to slow down, slow my shutter speed, embrace the grain, and accept the space within the shadows. Here's a tip. When you walk into a wine cellar, dark, atmospheric, practically no light, the instinct is to fix it. Add light, boost the exposure, and make it brighter so you can see everything clearly. Don't do that. The darkness is the mood. The shadows are the story. Push your ISO, open your aperture, and stabilize the camera. Let the image be as dark as the space actually is. The detail you lose in the shadows is replaced by something more important. The actual feel of being there. After the tunnels and tasting several varieties of wine from the small family-owned bodega, we were driven up into the vineyards in the late afternoon light to watch the sunset. And then several travelers from our group took off their shoes, rinsed their feet in buckets of water, and got into a vat filled with grapes. They stomped the grapes as the rest of us watched in laughter. As the sun dipped down below the horizon behind us, the chill in the air was enough for us to head back down the hill to a private space they had prepared. There we enjoyed tapas made right, more wine, and the kind of hospitality that doesn't feel like a tourism package. It felt like being invited to someone's home. Later that night, we stood under the clearest star-filled sky I've seen in years. An astrologist pointed out the constellations. I put my camera down completely and just enjoyed the experience. I've been exploring Spain since the 90s, and every time I go back, I leave with images that surprise me. The planned shots rarely carry the soul of my travels. The thing that stays with me is the detail I almost walked past because I was looking for something bigger. If you're creating work right now, whether you're making photographs, painting canvases, or building a creative life, and you feel like inspiration only exists somewhere else, I want you to hear this. The interesting things are happening right where you are right now. You just have to slow down enough to notice them, to see them. Stay ready. That's all. Just stay ready. Next week, we move further into northern Spain, the Basque Country. The rugged coastline, the places where the pilgrims have been walking for thousands of years. If you want to dive deeper into this new way of seeing, I put together a free field guide called Stop Shooting, Start Seeing. It's designed to help you break out of any creative ruts and find the extraordinary in your everyday environment. The link is down in the description, and if you use the code SPAINVISION, it's completely yours for free. If something in this journey resonated with you, the light, the stillness, or the reminder to put your camera down, leave a comment below. I read every single one of them. Thanks for being here. Go find the light in your corner of the world, and I'll see you next Wednesday.